Hello and welcome to another episode of Below the Rim Basketball. I'm your host, Quinn. If you are taking time out of your day today to be here on YouTube watching this, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking that time. And while you're here, make sure you throw this video a like, give our channel a subscribe, throw me a comment on this video or past video. I'd love to hear from you guys as I try to grow this page, grow the engagement and the presence that I have here on YouTube. So I'd love to hear from you guys on any and everything. Give me feedback on my terrible takes, or if I get stuff wrong, happens all the freaking time. Let me know, call me out on it. Love to have that interaction, love to hear from you guys. So we're gonna get into it here. We're gonna start in the NBA. We got our NBA playoffs coming up here right around the corner. So not a ton of super breaking news over the last couple days. We have WNBA draft coming up on Monday. Again, NBA playoffs right around the corner. So we're kind of in that lull of the end of the regular season where the tanking teams are tanking and are gonna fight tooth and nail to get a loss, not a win, so they can get better draft position and all of that. So makes for some anticlimactic games here at the end of the year. Obviously, college basketball just wrapping up. Have a little bit of transfer news that we'll touch on at the very end of the show. Nothing too crazy there yet from what I've seen. We'll monitor that heavily throughout the weekend and hopefully have some good news in the transfer portal for you guys to talk about here next week. So starting in the NBA last night, we had Celtics, Lakers, and Celtics and Knicks and Lakers Warriors last night on Amazon Prime. We're chatting the two big games. Full disclosure, I live out here on the West Coast and I work, and so those 4 o'clock start times for Eastern Conference games get a little tough for me sometimes, particularly depending on the day. Yesterday was one of those days. I didn't get a chance to catch a ton of that game. I saw bits and pieces of the fourth quarter as I was getting home. But I got a huge win for the Knicks. I thought that was a good little statement win going into the postseason. And I think the one thing that the Knicks have going for them, I still think that Boston is your team to beat coming out of the East. I think the way that they were playing before Tatum came back, when everyone anticipated that they weren't going to be getting Tatum back at any point this season, they were really clicking. Jaylen Brown all of a sudden has obviously a finals MVP, but now is showing to be a legit regular season MVP candidate when he was there with the team by himself. You add Jason Tatum back into that mix. He doesn't quite look like himself pre-injury fully, but he looks pretty dang close. So you add him to that mix, and I think you're looking at Boston being the team to beat coming out of the East. I think Detroit, I like Detroit a lot. I love Cade Cunningham. I think they might be a little bit too young, inexperienced. We've seen this in years past with some of the teams, the Thunder, before they broke through and got there last year. And so I don't quite trust the Pistons fully. And while I do trust the Celtics, I think the Knicks have shown, obviously last season, post-Tatum injury, they went and beat the Celtics in that playoff series. And I think last night you just saw a little bit of it's going to be hard to win in MSG. The Knicks are a tough out for the Celtics. They match up well with them. If they are hitting any sort of perimeter jumpers from the outside, the Celtics are going to have a really tough time beating the Knicks, because that's how you beat the Celtics. If you can match them or stay relatively close with them in the three-point game, you're going to give yourself a good chance there. So I think that coming out of the East, we could see maybe this is finally the year that the New York Knicks get back to the NBA Finals, make a little bit of run, get out of the Eastern Conference for the first time in a long time. So we'll see what happens there. Baylor Shireman was on fire last night. I believe he was 6 of 8 from 3 or 7 of 9 from 3, which was pretty cool to watch. I saw a good game from Peyton Pritchard and no Jaylen Brown for the Celtics. So that is obviously a big takeaway, is that how much can you really take from that game last night without Jaylen Brown. But again, I think the Knicks maybe somewhere in the back recesses of Jason Tatum's brain, maybe have a little bit of real estate there given the injury, given the playoff series win last year. So we'll see what happens in the postseason, but I am very excited for a potential Knicks and Celtics second round playoff matchup. I think would be electric and be a toss-up, in my opinion, of who's going to win that one. So the bigger game, for me at least, that I was able to watch a little bit more of was Lakers Warriors. And most of the day was super excited for a vintage LeBron James without Luka Doncic, without Austin Reeves, both out due to injury, playing against Steph Curry with a Warriors team that is pretty lackluster this year and just lacking guys and also super injury riddled. So I thought that's what we were getting last night. That's not what we got. Steph Curry didn't end up playing, so we got the Seth Curry versus LeBron James show. But still, I thought it was a super entertaining game. And again, for somebody like me, I was born in 1997, so my entire childhood up until this point, I've watched LeBron James be in the NBA for pretty much all of my cognizant life. He's been in the NBA, been the best player, or right up there as one of the best players in the league. I've always thought he's been the best player. Some may argue that throughout his time in the league. So it's really cool to watch him now at 41, still doing it. You got a relative that's coming out of a coma. They've been in it since 2003. Just tell him LBJ still doing his thing, still getting it done. Just pretty incredible. 26 points. I thought it was, he's shown his most energy that he's shown at all this entire season with Luka and Austin Reeves out these last 2 games at this point. He's shown a lot of energy, shown that he can still be that guy when needed. That just hasn't really been his role with this year's Lakers team. So really, really cool to watch him kind of turn back the clock, get a vintage LeBron performance against the Warriors, despite it not being Warriors teams of old that we're used to. But I thought that was a lot of fun. And the cool little side note from that game was that we got the first ever son to father and then back to father to son assist in the NBA. Bronny in the first half got a nice little steal, kick ahead pass to LeBron for a fast break dunk. And then later in the second half, we saw LeBron with a little swing pass over to Bronny, who hit a wing 3. So pretty cool. I know there's a lot of haters out there of the Bronny situation and LeBron in general, but regardless of who you are, I thought that was a really cool moment, getting father to son assist and then vice versa on the other end. So really, really cool moment. I thought that was a lot of fun, particularly for somebody like me who's been a longtime Steph Curry fan. Kind of gave me a little fun thing to pay attention to and to monitor there throughout the game yesterday. So kind of another not super entertaining night in the NBA, if you could say that. Again, as we're wrapping up, the teams that are tanking, teams that are in the bottom are not trying to move up at all right now. They want better draft picks, particularly with this draft class that we have coming in is pretty loaded. So guys are not going to screw around with that, try to win a meaningless 80 out of 82 NBA game of the season at this point of the year. So with the Warriors, they are in a weird spot because they are locked into that play-in position given their record. But I just don't, even if Steph is to come back and continue to play, I know he's back, but kind of load managing at this point, I just don't think they have the guys on that roster. Unfortunately, I have rooted for the Warriors for a long time. I was a college shooter, so I've always loved Steph Curry, but they just don't have it this year. So I think if anything, again, it's hard for me to say this because I love the showmanship of Steph Curry, but if I'm them, I'm shutting him down for these last 2 games. If they make the play-in, I don't know if you want to play him, because then if you are to win 2 games, get into a playoff series there, and you risk re-injuring something that he's had or whatever that is, it feels like to me you're better off getting a better draft pick, fingers crossed, maybe something crazy like the Mavs last year and you move up higher in the draft than you're anticipated to in that draft lottery. But I think they just got to shut it down, retool for next year, maybe turn that pick, whatever that pick ends up being, turn that into a trade piece that you can bring in another veteran star. And lots of rumors about Giannis, lots of rumors about LeBron potentially coming up there, and see if you can't scrape together a roster good enough and competitive enough to try to make one last go of it with Steph Curry before he retires or hits that point where he is just not capable of being a super big contributor to a championship team, which so far it appears he still is. We just haven't quite seen him with those guys around him here in the last couple of years. So for the sake of the Warriors, I'm hoping they get that figured out, but I hope that they take this year and just say, lost season, let's regroup what we can and let's get to the finish line here and let's just get to the offseason and go deal with the draft or trade market, whatever that looks like. So big news, well, not big news, but one thing I wanted to touch on the NBA before we move on is I've been seeing a ton of stuff about the 65-game minimum rule that NBA players have to play to be eligible for MVP awards and all the major awards and first team and all of those things, which is obviously a super important thing because of the money, well, for many reasons, legacy, all of these things for those guys. But on the back end of it for teams and for organizations is that there's money attached to these superlatives, MVP and first team, second team. All of those things come with different money incentives in contract negotiations, which is huge, and which could, in one hand, you could say that somebody who's an MVP candidate, a first team All-NBA candidate, they don't make that 65-game cut, they don't get that award. The team is getting a value and a bargain on that player to where, oh, I get this really great MVP, first team All-NBA caliber player, and if it all works out correctly, I don't have to give him 10, 20, 30 more or extra $1 million to go with it when we re-sign him. But on the flip side, you're going to have guys that are filling in those spots on first, second, third team All-NBA, MVP voting, Defensive Player of the Year voting, all of those things that otherwise with those other guys that maybe played 62 games were on that list, they wouldn't be in consideration, they wouldn't be making these teams, And now all of a sudden you're getting an asset and a player for teams that, oh my gosh, I have this guy that at his salary where we have him, we love him, but now for his next contract he can get a supermax or whatever that is, and teams aren't going to want to pay that for guys that they don't view are in that upper echelon of stars. So it created a whole issue here, and I think it's really being talked about a lot this year because we see a lot of guys down the finish here being kind of between that 55, 65, more like 58, 59, and 63, 64 range, and have to either play in games in these last two regular season, last 2 or 3 NBA regular season games, or they just have to accept that I'm not going to be eligible like Victor Wembanyama. If he doesn't play, he's not eligible for the MVP. He just had a rib injury. Do the Spurs want to put him out there in 2 meaningless games? They are absolutely locked into the 2 seed no matter what happens. Is it worth risking him out there re-injuring something, re-aggravating something else going into the playoffs so that he can be on that MVP ballot, be on that Defensive Player of the Year ballot, which I don't blame the guys at all for wanting to be on those things. They absolutely deserve it. That's why you work as hard as you do. That's why you're a competitor like they are, and they want to be have the accolades and for your legacy and the history of your brand and everything like that. These things are important, and I think by all accounts, if Wemby didn't hit that 65 game mark this year, no one would think that anyone in the league was a better defender than Victor Wembanyama, but he would not be eligible for that defensive MVP award. So my thought, and I think this has been said out there, I'm sure it has been said, I'm not that smart and I'm not that revolutionary and I'm a little late to the game on this one, so I'm sure it's been talked about, but what is confusing to me in researching this a little bit is your minimum games needed to be played for being the scoring leader, the blocks leader, rebounds leader, is 58 games. So Luka Doncic right now, unless he wins his appeal because of his child being born in another country, another continent, having to go over to Europe for the birth of his child, missed a couple games, he may win that appeal and they may give him those games back in that sense. But if he doesn't, he's going to finish the regular season as the NBA's leading scorer, and he's not going to be on any of our All-NBA teams. He's not going to be the MVP of the league or even in consideration or on that MVP ballot. And again, same thing with Victor Wembanyama. If he does not hit that 65 game mark, he's not in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, which is just absolutely silly. We all know that Wemby has by far been the best defensive player in the league so far. So it was something I would go to, and I think, again, not reinventing the wheel here, but if you're not going to get rid of that rule, which I understand for the load management and all of those things, I understand the reason for putting in the rule, but we got to tweak it a little bit. 65, you have an early season injury where you're tweaked and you're out for a week and a half, like Anthony Edwards' situation. This is exactly what he was in, missed a couple games early, and then if you have any significant injury throughout the year after that, you're gone. You can't make those All-NBA teams, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, even when you might be very, very much deserving of those awards. So I think you got to change this rule. If you're going to keep that type of game minimum in place, you got to bump it down to 58 because it just makes sense. If you're going to be the leading scorer in the league and by eligibility standards have to play that 58 games to be the leading scorer in the league, then I don't see why we wouldn't make that the rule with our MVP, our Defensive Player of the Year, first team All-NBA, all of those rules. I don't know why we wouldn't just bring it all to 58 games minimum. I don't think guys would complain too much after that. If you start missing more than 58, particularly if you have the opportunity to appeal under extenuating circumstances, typically you're not going to be in the MVP running, Defensive Player of the Year running anyway. So I think that's something they should look at, just 7 extra games, but that would make a huge difference, particularly now at this point. We wouldn't have to see potential star players getting potentially hurt or injured or anything here in these last couple games going into the playoffs, and we can just focus on the playoffs and get ready for that. And I think we're going to have a great playoffs in store. So that's what I want to focus on. I don't want any late season injuries that are going to take away from this potentially really, really good playoff run that we have coming up in the NBA. So that's my big NBA topic for today, is that 65 game rule. I've never really liked it to begin with. I understood why you implemented it with the load management and everything. Never been a huge fan of it all. But again, I think it needs to be tweaked at this point. I think we've hit a point where fans are upset watching this. It record books all of these things that are going to be maybe written a little differently than they should be without this rule. So I think the NBA needs to go to 58 games on that. And now, I don't have a whole ton more for you guys, kind of a slower Friday, but 2 final things I want to hit on the women's basketball side is first one, and big shout out and a big congratulations to Jackie Young from the Las Vegas Aces, returning there on a one-year deal with the Aces worth $1.9 million, which first ever one-year $1 million deal in the WNBA's history. So that is super, super exciting, deserves to be celebrated. Congratulations to Jackie Young, super key cog and piece to that Las Vegas Aces operation, bringing her back with Asia Wilson and all of that talent around her. You know that they're going to have their eyes on another WNBA championship, and we will see them here at the end of the summer, probably in that Final Four of the WNBA, if not back in the WNBA Finals, kind of where it feels like they belong at this point with that roster. So congratulations to Jackie Young. She's getting her bag, and it's just really cool. It's fun to see kind of the moment that we saw with Caitlin Clark, where I think women's basketball, women's college basketball really had this big, awesome national, international moment where it really blew up and was more on the radars of people that didn't pay attention to it before. And now we're starting to see kind of some of the ripple effects and the waves of that big boom that has captivated audiences across the country. People are a lot more interested in the WNBA, women's college basketball, women's sports in general than they were maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. So we are now seeing that these women are getting paid, starting to see that scale shift a little bit as their interest and their popularity is growing. So really, really cool. Super happy for the WNBA just in general. Those players are going to start getting paid, again, closer to where they really should be and what they feel like they deserve, which is super awesome, and I'm just very excited for that. So congratulations to Jackie Young. Super excited for our WNBA season to get started here soon. Again, we'll have our draft on Monday night, so I'll have probably a full day at some point next week where we'll talk about the different draft picks for the WNBA, where they're going, what that could mean for the league next season. And then final note that I want to touch on before I wrap things up for the weekend on the women's college basketball side is we have big transfer news with, I talked about last time with Audi Crooks. She entered the transfer portal coming out of Iowa State. 6'3" post player is the #1 player in the women's basketball transfer portal. So teams are going to be super, super interested in her, obviously. She's going to probably have close to her pick of where she wants to go, more or less. And yesterday, we saw through channels of social media, I saw somebody post that she is now following Notre Dame women's basketball, which is very interesting. We just saw them make their nice little NCAA run. And so that would be a spot that I think geographically, not super far, would work out. And then pairing her, Audi Crooks, with Hannah Hidalgo there at Notre Dame into next year, that would instantly vault them into Final Four contention, immediately probably into that national championship conversation with the veterans that they would have on that team, the depth that they would have on that team. And again, the portal is just opening, so who knows what other pieces are moving. But Audi Crooks to Notre Dame, nothing official, nothing confirmed, but a follow on social media, which in today's day and age is just about as good as anything else. So was very interested to see that, just again, monitoring that situation. I will keep you guys updated as soon as we know where she is transferring, where some of those other bigger name recruits on both the women's and men's side are going to be going here in the next couple weeks. But a lot of it is still kind of being ironed out. A lot of people still kind of doing it. It just opened on Monday night after the transfer portal just opened Monday night after that national championship game on the men's side. So trying to figure out exactly where everyone's going. It's a lot to monitor. I think I haven't seen the official number, but last year was 3,000 something players in the transfer portal. I'm sure it's going to be exactly the same this year. So I'm going to keep monitoring that, but keep on your radar right now. Audi Crooks to Notre Dame for next year, pairing with Hannah Hidalgo, could be an absolute dynamic duo there in South Bend. So keep your eyes on that. We'll touch on that a little bit more next week. Hopefully we know where she's going. We'll follow some more transfer news. Transfer news on the negative side for Syracuse University, by the way, just to make a little addendum to Tuesday's episode that I posted. Donnie Freeman at Syracuse. I was under the impression that from all accounts, it looked like he was going to be staying there with Jerry McNamara in Syracuse, but he has hit the transfer portal. Rumors that I'm seeing is that Mark Pope and Kentucky are super interested in him, going to be a junior wing guard, averaging 16.5, 7 rebounds a game. So no longer going to Syracuse, a loss for Jerry McNamara. They're going to get in the portal and hopefully find a guy that can come in, replace the scoring output that Donnie Freeman had, or maybe they're seeing something with Keon Anthony where they can start leaning to him for that kind of scoring role and main player, main shot creator for other guys. So we'll keep monitoring all of that. And again, if you're here on YouTube with me today, that's all I got for us. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And again, throw this video a like. Subscribe to the channel, give me a comment, tell me where I'm wrong or an idiot, all that stuff. Correct me if I've said something misspoken. It happens all the time. So again, I really appreciate it. This is Below the Rim Basketball. I am Quinn Carey, and we'll talk to you guys next time.